Welcome to the Hive 5, another show where I put items into a list because the moment you assign a number to something, it pisses people off, and that's fun. And this is actually the Hive 5 times 2 because the Hive 10 doesn't rhyme. On this episode, one of the great things about MMOs is that they're always changing and evolving because, unlike single-player games, people are expected to play MMOs over long periods of time. That means what was once a terrible MMO could end up being incredible, and also what was once a great MMO could end up being practically non-existent. As I said, this is great, unless you happen to cover MMOs in a professional, semi-professional, somewhat professional, extremely half-assed capacity such as myself. So I've decided to make this a yearly segment, the MMOs I currently deem as the best. Now, if your favorite MMO isn't on here, don't fret, it doesn't mean I think it's a bad game. I just don't like you and didn't put it on here specifically to piss you off. These are just my favorites. There's a lot of good MMOs out there that won't be on here because sadly I only have 10 spots and I didn't feel like doing more because I'm lazy. Alright, let's kick it. This is a game I'm really sad I left off my list that I did about 3 years ago, because Path of Exile is a ton of fun. It is the bar I use for action RPG MMOs. They all have to try to live up to Path of Exile. I mean, look at this character customization. Sorry other games, you lose by default. Sadly though, there's not much else I can say about Path of Exile. We've all likely played an ARPG at some point. This is like all the good ones. Lots of skills to use, enemies to kill, and loot to collect. That's really all it needs. Now, I've only ever gotten up to level 60 or 70, so I have no idea what endgame is like. Maybe one of you all can enlighten me, but I've never heard anyone say they dislike it, which is a plus. Also, it has a freaking fantastic free-to-play model. So if you enjoy those top-down games like Diablo or Torchlight, but want a little more MMO, you owe it to yourself to play Path of Exile. The only reason I have it so low on this list is because I don't find myself coming back to it very often. I only really come back to play with friends, which is a good reason, I suppose, but eh. The only MMO on this list to have been released this year, which is deeply sad, Black Desert has had its ups and downs since launch. Launch was great, though there were lots of people screaming it was pay to win and blah blah blah. I personally had a lot of fun with the game regardless. Mostly because I don't play to win. I play to fun, which if that isn't a thing, can we make that a thing? Combat is probably one of the best in the genre, with action combat that actually feels like action. But if combat isn't your thing, you have a metric crap ton of non-combat things to do. Maintain your workers, crafting, gathering, building a trade empire, and fishing. In its first year, the game has also put out a steady stream of updates and new content. The biggest thing I dislike about Black Desert is that it basically begs you to play it as your only MMO. All of the non-combat activities take up your time like crazy, and then the combat aspects, especially if you want to be competitive, are going to take up the rest. Sleep is for the weak! The other issue I have is that the game is pretty freaking confusing. Coming back after an extended break, I felt incredibly lost. I have no idea what to do, where to go, what's new, what's changed. I think I just need to start over completely, which is actually something I'd consider doing. Because for me, this game is all about the journey and not the destination. It doesn't help that the destination is open PvP, which I really don't want to do. Don't get me wrong, I respect Final Fantasy XIV in a lot of ways. It is probably one of the best MMOs to get into, especially if you're new to the genre or simply looking for an extremely solid MMO. It's also one of the safest games on this list. It really does nothing wrong. However, for me, it doesn't really do anything too right either. I enjoy the class system where you only need to have one character and can switch between classes at will. I also kind of like the more active crafting system, which is rare for me, I'm not really a crafter. But that's about it. I really don't enjoy the combat. It's not bad, it's just slow. Now, this is kind of a known thing because of the global cooldown for skills. And while this might be a small thing for some, I find myself getting bored and nearly falling asleep while healing dungeons. Even if I switch it up and try to DPS and heal at the same time, I'm still bored. And that's my biggest complaint about Final Fantasy XIV. It looks pretty though, kind of like a rave I'm sleeping through. It's the combat, really. Even with games like Blade and Soul and Black Desert, I still think Terra has the best combat in the genre. Sadly, it's the rest of the game that keeps it so low on this list. It's a very linear, easy experience. I tend to find myself just doing dungeons for the most part or killing BAMs, which are big-ass monsters. That's literal. But since that's what I really like to do in MMOs, the combat elevates this above others. Another reason Terra is so high on this list is that unlike a more full-featured game like Black Desert, I keep coming back to Terra, even if it is simply just to kill some I typically end up staying for at least a month or two. I like dungeoning a lot. Also metal thongs. Good God, that's gotta be uncomfortable. It's the corgis, really. Nah, I'm just kidding. Or am I? Rift is still one of the more enjoyable traditional MMOs I've ever played. It has a ton of varied content to do and an awesome class system. Being able to tweak and build hybrid classes was one of my favorite pastimes, and I would do it for hours. I have always felt Rift was one of the most underrated MMOs in the genre. That said, I don't enjoy the game as much as I used to. It seems like the content I used to enjoy doing has gotten more and more restrictive, or in the case of instant adventures, are flat out useless. With the new expansion, it also seems that the class building system is pretty much moot, as I found myself forced to use particular builds just to complete questing content. It took what was Rift's best asset and beat it into submission. However, I have faith they'll fix it and bring the game back to its former glory. Also, it's totally just the corgis. Say what you will, Warcraft is still the unmovable giant in the room no matter how many other giants come in and try to swat at it with sticks. Well over a decade old at this point, it's kind of hard to imagine what the MMOsphere would look like without World of Warcraft. Luckily, Legion was a good expansion. It brought in some new good content and some decent class changes. If you play MMOs or are looking to play an MMO, you would do yourself a disservice to not consider World of Warcraft. I will say, however, that the game is starting to feel a bit dated, which is pretty inevitable given how long ago it came out. But the upside of this is that there are few games out there that have the amount of content and polish that World of Warcraft does. That's about all I'll say on World of Warcraft, since more than likely you've already played it. Moving on. This one moved up quite a few spots because I actually like the game now. I really do have to credit that to the free max level character thing. I did not enjoy the leveling experience in Guild Wars 2. Still really don't. But using my max level character, I've gone back and completed tons of the old zone content, and that has given me a better appreciation of the game as a whole. It made the game fun for me, and made it so I could do content on my own terms. I suddenly felt compelled to play alts and see what else the game had to offer. The combat in Guild Wars 2 is enjoyable, the classes are varied, and the world is exceptionally large. And there's a fairly constant stream of new content for the game. I find myself coming back to Guild Wars 2 time and time again just to do some events, and mainly to explore. I haven't done any of the raids or other in-game stuff, but that's really not for me anyway. Namely, I just enjoy exploring. And gliding. Whee! SWTOR is still my standard for story in MMOs. Alliteration. Ugh. I keep coming back to SWTOR again and again for the new story content. Because of this, it's one of the only MMOs I've ever had the inclination to level up alts in. I have a maxed out character in every class except one. Frankly, SWTOR is a good MMO with solid mechanics in both PvE and PvP, which has made it one of the few MMOs I've actually bothered raiding in lately. Though I will say that the game is in desperate need of new endgame content. The newest expansions have concentrated solely on story content, which is great considering that's the main reason I play SWTOR, but that's not really enough. The game also has an extremely bad free-to-play model. I think if they just rename it to trial mode, that'd make a lot more sense. But I've never actually played SWTOR as a free-to-play game. I have always played with a subscription. Then again, I've done that with just about any MMO that offers a sub, because the benefits are usually worth it. The main reasons that this game is so high on my list is that 1, I like it, and 2, this game is great to play with friends. My wife and I play this consistently together, running dungeons, heroic quests, and trying to complete achievements. I actually achievement hunt in this game, another rare thing for me. And 3, it's Star Wars! Jedis, the Force, lightsabers, blasters! I'm a sucker for anything Star Wars. Even the holiday special. It's so terrible, I love it. Talk about a turnaround. When ESO launched, I actively disliked it. Like, the mere thought of it made me angry. However, each time I came back to the game, it had gotten better. Then with the latest One Tamriel update, I found ESO had become the game I was looking for. In fact, this and my number 1 were in a very, very close race for first. I am a huge sucker for doing content in whatever order I want, and for exploring. It's pretty much the same reason I like Guild Wars 2 now that I have a max level character. Instead of saying, no, you can't go to that zone or do that dungeon yet, you're not high enough level, now you can, and ESO epitomizes this. It made it so that exploration at any level is now possible and fun. Now, I've never cared for the combat in the Elder Scrolls series, and ESO is not perfect, but I enjoy it enough to keep playing. The class system is nice, it allows me to switch between DPS and heals when doing dungeons. I also like that I can use any weapon or armors that I find in the game. The game has put out a nice stream of constant updates since launch, and is coming out with a housing system soon. I haven't done a lot of the higher level content yet, but I enjoy the exploration factor so much that I keep coming back month after month. This game easily earns my Most Improved MMO of the Year award. That's pretty obvious though when you go from nearly the bottom to close to the top. Honestly, if you know me, you saw this coming, as many people on Twitter did. The Secret World has continued to put out new content over the years, and each time they do, I cannot wait to play it. The main reasons I enjoy the game so much are the setting, the quest, and the class system. I absolutely love the ambient horror and atmosphere that this game sets up. It's creepy yet fun, with a ton of in-references to all different types of horror franchises. The questing in the Secret World is probably some of the best in the genre. It's not full of bland kill and fetch quests. There's also tons of puzzles and platforming. And sure, other games have these as well, but whenever another game has me figuring out patterns to get across an invisible bridge inside an ancient pyramid, then we'll talk. The story of the game is also incredibly intriguing, fun, creepy, and occasionally downright terrifying. The highlight for me was working my way through this daycare center for demon spawn. I never thought I'd be scared of little girls, but I am. Lastly, the classless skill system is really cool and allows you to make some awesome hybrid builds that wouldn't exist in normal MMOs, like the healer tank. I've done quite a few videos on this game, so there's no need for me to drag on. It's a great freaking game and you should be playing it. Here's hoping for a Stranger Things themed issue next. Make it happen, devs. And that's it, my top 10 MMOs of 2016. I hope 2017 comes through and just wrecks this list and we have a lot of new MMOs to put on there. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe. You can also watch another video I've done. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And lastly, you can donate to me on Patreon like these other amazing people. They are my top people of 2016.